Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this amazingly beautiful Friday. It's so beautiful outside. If you're new to the show, this is Careers in Animal Welfare brought to you by Pasadena Humane. It is a segment that we have gone ahead and crafted to bring you all the neat, cool, weird out there careers in animal welfare or just having to do with animals. With me today is someone really cool. Kind of wish I had his job because he does really amazing things. Russ Tuttle, how you doing today?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome sauce. So you do a very interesting thing. What is your title and what does that mean that you do?
All right, so my title is Law Enforcement Captain for the United States Forest Service, and I work here on the Angeles National Forest. It also encompasses the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument, as well as the newly minted St. Francis Dam Memorial. And I am overseeing the law enforcement program for the National Forest.
Okay, so does that mean you go out on like patrol every day? What does that look like on a day-to-day for you?
So most days I am kind of doing the administrative stuff in the office, making sure that all the reports are done and all of the stuff that nobody likes to do is taken care of so that the officers who work for me can be out in the field and running around the mountains.
Oh, that's fun. So
Yeah,
the officers are out there in the nitty-gritty and you're just like directing the soldiers.
trying to keep them all pointed in a general direction, and they get to do the fun job running around.
Fair enough. I feel like anytime you get to be outdoors, that automatically is a fun job.
Yes, any job where you can just say, I need to hike to the top of that mountain and go check out that trail and go for a walk. And
Yeah.
it has its
Go look at
benefits.
some bear poop.
Right.
So what got you started on this path?
Honestly, it was a lot of luck and a little
Okay.
bit of foundation when I was a young kid. But I had recently got out of the military and was working for the Forest Service, and the law enforcement commander for Southern California approached me and said, "Hey, why don't you come, check this out and do a ride along and hang out?" And, I said, "Well, okay, I'll check it out." I had no idea what Forest Service law enforcement did, and really wasn't even on my radar of things that I wanted to do. And I went on some ride-alongs and hung out with the officers, and I realized that this is a really cool job. I fit here. I need to make a run for this.
So what was it about the ride along that really got you on board?
Up in the mountains, you are dealing with a wide range of different issues. Nothing is, you're not chained behind a desk and staring at a computer screen. Your scenery is always changing. What you're doing is always changing. You might be going to a traffic stop. You might be talking to folks about campfires. You might be talking to hunters. Just the variety and the constant changing nature of it. And for the most part, people who are in the mountains out recreating they're interesting people. It's fun to just get out and talk to them.
That's true. I feel like especially coming from the city mentality, meeting anyone who's really outdoorsy and wants to be out there brings a whole different vibe, even just to like general conversations. So that's cool. So you do get to, how many people would you say on average you meet any like season? I guess I don't know if camping has a season.
Believe it or not, it's kind of year round. You get folks that like warm weather camping and folks that like camping in the snow. That one's not for me, but I would say an officer will make at least 1,000 contacts a year, maybe more, with just, between talking to people and the normal course of their job.
Okay, so even though there is an aspect of animal welfare to this career path, it's also very much about developing people skills, right?
It's very much about people skills, and it's very centered on not just the animals, but their home, their environment, making sure that the natural resources that make up their home is taken care of and not exploited or destroyed.
Okay. And actually, I really like that you've touched on that because I feel like that's sometimes a conversation we don't very often get to expand on. So, what kinds of things are people doing in those areas that could potentially be detrimental to the animals?
Fire. Fire is a
Oh,
huge one. Um, Something as simple as target shooting can spark a fire. A campfire that's gets away from you. You think it's out, but overnight the winds pick up and it rekindles the fire and blows a spark into the brush. Um, that is the number one uh, destroyer and an impact to the environment and the habitat that all the animals call home.
okay. So, touching on the subject of fire, you mentioned something interesting before we started about the picture behind you. What is that?
So last summer we had two pretty huge fires here on the Angeles. We had a handful of big fires in between that, but this one is the lake fire. And this was, if I'll move my head a little bit here, um, this was approximately an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so after it was reported, and the fire had already exploded and was um, just giant. I watched this fire um, most of the first night, and it just, from miles and miles away, you could see the flames coming off the top of the hills.
My goodness. And how long did it take to put that out?
That was over a month. I don't recall the exact time, but that one took a while. And with fires, um, it's not out when you stop seeing the fire, right? It's like with the campfire, it's still burning and still hot down in the roots. And so even when the smoke is gone and the big flames are gone, the firefighters are still out there uh, looking for hot spots, looking for spots that aren't completely extinguished to try and get those under control and make sure that there's no chance that a wind can come rekindle them and blow them into an adjacent area.
Okay, so that's actually something I didn't know. I figured fire gone, we are good. So there's
Right.
still potential for that to just spark back up.
Right. And even last year during the Bobcat fire, we had a number of days when the big flame part of the fire was out, but smoke was still coming back up as wind events would come in. It would rekindle the fire internal on the fire, and the firefighters would have to go out there and check it and make sure that it's doesn't have a chance of escaping the outside of the fire and starting to burn more.
Okay, and in that situation, what can be done for the wildlife in the area, if anything?
Really, they know long before we know what to do.
Okay.
They will be running, and you will see as we're driving around inside the fire areas, trying to make sure that people aren't coming up to get pictures and trying to keep the general population from interfering with the firefighters. We see bears and deer and bighorn sheep and you name it, everything from a squirrel up to the largest bear. They're running. They know where the fire is and where it's going, and they hightail it the opposite direction.
Okay. So safe to say, if you're walking in the forest and you see a whole bunch of animals running in a direction, maybe run with them. Would that be a sound piece of advice?
Yeah, you might want to look at what they're running from.
Fair enough. All right.
uh,
Survival tip for the future, guys. Just
right.
go with the animals. They know what's happening. So kind of tagging back into an earlier part of this conversation, when you were getting started and things like that, did you have any early influences that let you know, like, hey, maybe I do want to work in the outdoors, or even mentors that helped guide you?
I've had mentors and influences all through my life that have um, come and gone and kind of shaped portions of my life. But when it comes to the animal welfare and the wildlife side, there's one that has always stuck out with me um, so far through my entire adult life. When I was a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 7 years old, maybe 6 years old, my stepdad worked for California Department of Fish and Game on the fish hatchery side. And we
Okay.
were coming back from up in the mountains, up in the Sierras, and this game warden came up next to us and was turning on the lights and hitting the horn and, waving us to pull over. And my stepdad pulled over and we got into this parking lot, and it was a game warden that he knew. And the
Oh,
game warden had a baby deer, still a spotted fawn. Something had happened to the mother, and the baby couldn't survive on his own. So he had it in this little cage in his front seat. And he flagged us down so that myself and my two brothers could get out and check out the deer and, pet it and get that experience. And
like awesome
that
experience.
that is like one of the coolest things that you can have, is to get to interact with a baby animal. Honestly, regardless if it's domestic or wild, everybody loves puppies and kittens, and there's just something about babies, and that memory stuck with me and really became a foundation of um, me working in the Forest Service and working in that conservation side.
That is honestly the cutest answer I've heard thus far in these interviews. um, that is really okay. So, what does happen in that situation? You find that animal, it's either injured or it's abandoned. What does happen?
So we try and get it to a facility that's licensed to rehab that animal. For us
Okay.
in our Forest Service, we would call Department of Fish and Wildlife, the game wardens, and say, hey, we've got this animal, and the parent has either been killed or mortally wounded and is not expected to survive. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like the baby's able to flourish on its own, or maybe it's the animal is just, it's injured and it cannot survive on its own. And they will come out and kind of help coordinate where to take it, or take it off of our hands and take it to a special rehab facility or a veterinary that's got the training for wildlife. And it's the broad range. You have specialized centers that are for bears and deer, some centers that are just for exotic animals,
Mhm.
um, raptors, eagles and hawks. There's a lot out there speckled around, and it's a pretty good community of folks that are kind of in the know of where to take things.
Okay. And how often do you guys come across injured or abandoned baby wildlife?
Honestly, it's really sporadic.
Okay.
Um, you'll be doing your normal job, not expecting anything, and then boom, there's a bear cub, and you kind of watch it for a while, and not seeing a mom, so you call Fish and Game and or Fish and Wildlife now and say, hey, this is what I have. If you guys have a warden or a biologist that can come take a look, and maybe it needs to be taken to a facility, or maybe we just kind of let Mother Nature do Mother Nature and kind of keep tabs on it.
Okay. And as you were progressing through your career, was there ever a point when you were just like, maybe this is not for me and you wanted to do something else? And if there was, what made you stay?
There's always things that happen within law enforcement that makes you kind of start to second guess whether or not it's for you.
Okay.
In my particular case, it has to do with the vehicle accidents and injuries and dealing with that, where sometimes that can get a little bit overloading.
Okay.
And but in the end, you really reflect and realize what a great job it is, and how much fun you have doing it, and getting out to interact with different people. It's very rewarding to be up in a campground or on a trailhead, and you run into a dad with his kids, and they're trying to learn to camp or fish for the first time, and you can go out and kind of give them a little helping hand on, this is how you start a good campfire, or this is how you set up to do s'mores, or set up a tent, or this is how you tie a knot to go fishing. Those kind of interactions are really rewarding, and they can definitely overshadow the bad ones.
Very cool. And that's also very like sweet and wholesome that you get to see like these people having memorable experiences, and you can use that as a form of self-care when you're having a hard day.
Yep.
um, it's kind of always a recurring theme whenever we speak to anybody working in any form of animal welfare, that it can get very emotionally taxing and it can be very like draining. So I always like asking, what are your forms of self-care?
Um, really spending time with the family and just getting the head clear, doing a really hard hike. So
Okay.
you are, pushing it and really breaking a sweat and exerting yourself or working out really heavy always seems to help kind of give you that reset and clear everything back up.
Very cool. And I feel like you're in the perfect spot to be able to achieve that reset. So okay, that's
Yeah.
very interesting to see about how different people handle, the harder parts of their job. Um, what kind of foundations would you say that younger people should start getting involved in, or even volunteer opportunities that they should look into if this is a career path they want to go down?
There's a lot out there. It kind of depends on a little bit of the age. Obviously, the older you get, the more um, opportunity you have for the different organizations, because some of the help they need, it's the younger generation, the younger kids, they really can't do on their own, more for, I guess, liability reasons.
Yeah.
Um, but as you get older, the doors just open rapidly. And the bigger thing is finding out, what is it that makes you happy? What part of conservation or working with animals is it that really interests you? And that's really going to steer you. If you are big into marine life, maybe you go out and you surf a lot, and uh, you do a little bit with surf riders, and that's just where your interest lies. Well, there's a lot of organizations that go out and do beach cleanups, and they do turtle counts, and they do
Mhm.
marshland counts for some of the endangered birds that migrate through different times a year. Um, on the flip side of that, you have rescue centers that are for breed specific. Maybe you just really love dogs and you love, well, I'll pick one that I know about, pit bulls. Right? You have a love for pit bulls. There are rescue centers all over the place that specialize in pit bulls. Um, there's rescue centers that specialize in, greyhounds that used to be race dogs, and getting them placed into homes. So it's really finding out where it is that your passion lies, and that will inevitably take you to the organization that is going to be best suited for you. And you're looking at college, Moore Park College, just in the county over here right next to us in Ventura, they have a whole exotic animal program. Um,
Oh,
I've been up there too. They've got like a little teaching zoo. Kids can come up and go through it and have a presentation, and you are a couple feet away from a mountain lion and monkeys and exotic snakes. And so they're hidden everywhere. They're tucked in everywhere around LA.
that's true. I feel like most people think LA, it's huge city, and we really don't like search out these animal like encounters and things like that, and especially ones that are done in a humane way, right? That it's
Mhm.
actually geared towards education versus, why am I so tongue tied today? Versus kind of like a tourist spot. So
Right.
that's actually really interesting that you brought up More College, because that's not even a resource I was aware of. So it's amazing that they have something set up to start teaching about, wildlife and the mountain lion population and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I understand when, you were an officer out in the mountains, and you got to do the fun job. You had a lot of interactions with like the local wildlife and things like that, right?
Yeah, sometimes I think I attract mountain lions. Um,
Oh, okay. Just big cats love you. Okay.
for some reason, I tend to run into them more than the average person. Um, and I've had some that were kind of like really, really cool, and some that were a little bit nerve wracking. And
So
It-
what happens in that situation? You have one that's a little overly curious. It's like coming up to you. Is this like one of those scare them off type of things, or what happens here?
yeah, big one is never turn your back on them. Make
Okay.
yourself just as big as possible and slowly back away. Um, in general, a mountain lion will kind of do an analysis. Can I eat this thing without getting myself hurt? And if you back away, never turn your back, never do anything that's going to trigger that predator prey reaction in an animal, it greatly increases your chances. If you have
Okay.
something that you can throw at them, if you can throw a rock or a water bottle, sometimes that can help as well. Yeah, I've
So
had.
big noises and like that's not. Oh, it is. Okay.
Oh yeah, big noises. If you yell, if you have a whistle, anything that makes you look um, larger and more of an adversary than they initially thought is a good thing.
Okay. So you said you felt like you were like a magnet for them. How many times a week were you running into these mountain lions? It's like a once a week type of thing?
Um, I would say one good encounter every couple months,
Okay.
um, which for a mountain lion is pretty frequent. They're generally an animal that likes to be left alone. They will see you long before you know that they're around. Um, but I've had one, a story that I shared with you. Uh, we had a problem with some dirt bikes coming across a ridge line and from private property and coming out onto public land in an area that was closed. And I was kind of hiking down the ridge of the mountain to kind of figure out where they were coming from. And as I'm walking back to my truck, there's this one spot where the trees and vegetation kind of makes a tunnel that you walk through. And I'm walking through it and enjoying the little bit cooler temperature inside this vegetation tunnel. And just got a really, really, really bad feeling coming up to my back. And, the hair stand up and something is not right. And I stopped and kind of looked around and didn't see anything. And I slowly turned around and looked, and there was a mountain lion behind me, crouched down, ears flattened out, dropped to the center of gravity. It was not a good spot for me to be in.
And how did you get out of there?
We had a standoff for a while, what seemed like about 10 years. I'm sure it was 30 seconds. Slowly backed away, and he kind of turned and went back downhill towards the orange orchards and the private property. And I walked backwards for quite a while and never walked that ridge line again.
Yeah, makes sense. I completely agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
Um, wow, so that is super intimidating. Have you ever had any other like standoffs like that with other animals?
We've had a few with bears, kind of scare each other. And the same thing is you scare each other and kind of back off a little bit, and they back off a little bit, and it's a standoff for a little while. It's, what's your intentions? I don't know. What are you doing here? And um, make your way back to the trailhead or the roadside or the vehicle, and give your heart a little bit of time to slow down because it tends to go fast.
Most definitely. Bears is actually something we also are familiar with as a shelter. Somehow we are the animal control. They always call for the bears out in Sierra Madre.
Okay.
Even though that is a fish and wildlife thing. So yeah, our animal control officers are called for that pretty often. The good part though is I believe it's like a juvenile bear or like a teenage bear, so it's not overly big. But yeah, our animal control officers often talk about like how that's a scary first for them because they're used to, dogs, maybe coyotes, a
Right.
peacock every now and then. But yeah, then it's bear.
Yeah, a lot of the bears that are around the Angeles, they are so chill. Um, they're really just trying to either find water, find food, get a good scratch, or take a nap. It's really rare that you have one that is showing any kind of aggression. Um, so it's not the normal for a bear,
Mhm.
but it is kind of how we have here in Southern California, at least around LA basin.
And I wonder if that has to do more with them becoming more comfortable with people in the area and they just don't necessarily see us as those threats anymore, or if it's more about them being just confident in their environment.
I think the level of people probably plays into it. If we really look at it, they're just used to hearing the sounds of people and seeing people and smelling people. And just through that oversaturation of exposure, they kind of don't see it as a danger anymore. I'm sure that's probably a pretty big factor. I don't know for sure. I jokingly say that they hang out surfing too much and they're way too calm.
They're just California bears.
Right. Yeah.
If you could give a piece of advice to our viewers today about, pursuing a career like this, what would it be?
Um, if you're pursuing a career within animal welfare conservation, figure out what part it is that makes you happy.
Okay.
Don't try and just get into it because you think it's cool or because you think it pays good money. It doesn't. Um,
Fair
find
enough.
find the piece that makes you happy and make your life, pursuing that. You will become a very wealthy person pursuing what makes you happy as opposed to just trying to chase uh, the next shiny object.
And I feel like that is also very true, right? Because when you do something that you have a genuine interest in and a passion for, you want to work harder for it. It's not something that you're just doing day in, day out to collect a paycheck. Which I mean, I feel like very often leads you to a higher understanding of what you want to do. So that was a very insightful piece of advice.
Yeah,
Um,
and whatever you choose, try and be the best at it.
yes. If you're not first, you're last.
Right.
um, So as I'm going along, I do have a couple more questions for you, but we do want to open it up now to the Q&A. So if you have any questions for our amazing Mr. Tuttle, go ahead and drop those in the chat box and we will go through them as we have time. So back to you and I. When you started this career, did you ever feel like this was something that was temporary, or was this something that, like you said, you wanted to be like the best at?
um, honestly, I've stumbled through whatever job I've had. It's been, I'm going to do this until I figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And while I'm in that job, I just have a natural drive to always want to do better and hit the next level within that job. Um, and I go until I wake up one morning and go, yeah, this is not for me. I'm
Okay.
gonna, it's time to grow up, and I'm going to go do a different job, and then I'll do that until I decide, what do I want to do when I grow up. It's just a continuous cycle with me of go
Growing
for it
up.
while it's happy and it makes you brings you that internal reward.
Okay.
And when it doesn't anymore, find out why and fix it.
And I feel like that's very true. I feel like once you get in that mindset of I'm no longer happy with this, then it just becomes kind of like a toxic work environment for you.
Right.
So always be seeking those opportunities to level up and to grow, even if you're in a career field that you're just using as a stepping stone.
Yeah,
So most
most
definitely.
definitely.
So looking at our questions that were sent to me, one of them is, what is the wildest experience you've had in your career?
The wildest experience. Well, that's a tough one. There's been a lot.
You're welcome to give me a couple.
um, the one I'll give you this one is one where I found myself doing that internal monologue, and I found myself saying, "I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this."
Okay.
So a portion of our job, uh, to varying degrees, has been dealing with the marijuana production in the national forests
Okay.
and dealing with the environmental chemical hazards that come with it.
Oh, okay.
And one of the ways that we get into these remote locations is by Essentially, you take a helicopter, you hook one end of the rope to the bottom of the helicopter, and you hook yourself to the other end of the rope. And the helicopter takes off and flies, and then lovingly sets you down kind of gently into this remote area, and you go to work. And we had one, East Camino Cielo is the ridge line above Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay.
And so we were starting it from the top of that ridge line, and the helicopter picked us up, and we flew out over the ridge line towards Santa Barbara, and then started to drop down into one of the drainages to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of drops pretty quick, and you find yourself a couple thousand feet above the ground, overlooking the ocean, overlooking Santa Barbara, overlooking the islands. The whales are doing their thing, the ships are doing their thing. And I just, in that moment, I'm like, I can't believe somebody's paying me to do this. This
Yeah.
is awesome.
I'm just
Uh,
picturing like a whole Mission Impossible moment, like cut in with some like Nat Geo beauty. That's cool. Okay.
and then, it's working in Ojai, and I was out just patrolling around, and the local raptor center was releasing a red-tailed hawk.
Okay.
And I, as a kid, had always seen red-tailed hawks. You always see them flying around.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of got to do a little bit of things volunteering as a kid. They used to do bald eagle counts on Millerton Lake.
Okay.
And you'd get in a boat, you'd float around, and you'd click how many adults you saw and how many juveniles you saw, and report it back to the biologists, and they did their study for all the bald eagles. And so I always thought that raptors were really cool. And I pull up to kind of find out what this person's doing. They've got the van, and it's parked off the side of the road, kind of away from everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
I walk up, and it's the Raptor Center, and they're getting ready to release a rehabilitated red-tailed hawk. And the bird is huge. I mean, bigger than I ever thought a red-tailed hawk would be up close. And it's 3 feet from me as they're releasing it to go fly back into the, Mother Nature and go hang out in the tree. And that was another incident where I'm just like, I can't believe I'm getting a paycheck for this. This is awesome. How many people get to be this close to, a giant predator bird?
Yeah. And yeah, see, in my mind, like I see them whenever, we're out and about, like they're just off in the distance somewhere. Maybe they're being attacked by crows, but they're off in the distance somewhere. So in my head, I don't necessarily think of them as this like huge predator. So if you were to guesstimate, how large was it?
Um, oh, it took up the majority of the top third of the woman that was releasing it. So I would
Oh,
say probably a 1.5 to 2 feet from, claws to beak.
wow, that's massive. Wow.
It,
Okay.
it was a
So
big bird, yeah.
I have like a bird phobia thing, so that doesn't help me, but it's good info to have. Someone else is asking if there's any teenage opportunities in the forestry service.
Um, Not directly for the Forest Service, but we do have a number of volunteer groups and organizations that come into the forest, and they do various projects and activities. And I know that there are teenage participants in those groups. A lot of them, REI has some programs. There's a mountain bike association that does a lot of trail maintenance across
Oh,
there's some trail maintenance groups. There's the fire lookout group, up in the speckled throughout the forest. And it used to be everywhere, but there's a couple left. There's these giant towers, and volunteers are in these towers, and they man those towers during fire season, and all they do is look for smoke. And as soon as they see smoke, they call it into dispatch. They give a distance and a bearing so that we can start, fire response going there.
mhm.
It's fire. Well, I'm drawing a blank. I shouldn't draw a blank, but I'm drawing a blank on the full name. But they're all volunteers, and they devote a lot of time and resources to help and keep those fires reported as fast as possible so that we can keep the level of impact as low as possible. And I know that there are some teenagers in those organizations up in the fire towers.
Okay. And see, I feel like that's a great opportunity, one, just for anyone to be in, but two, especially a younger person to be in, only because I think it gives you a really good insight into what it means to maintain just our ecosystems, one, but two, it really does save lives, whether that be animal or human, just anything that's in that area.
Yeah, most definitely. And um, anybody can call into the Angeles National Forest or send an email to the general email box on the website and ask, what organizations are there out there where I can volunteer. I'm interested in the fire towers, or I'm interested in helping with trails, or I'm interested in, helping with endangered species counts. And they can get you directed to the right people to get set up.
Okay. Out of curiosity, how does trail maintenance work? Because I was under the assumption that it was just people walking through there all the time that created trails. So it's an actual like program.
It is very tough work. These folks
Okay.
that do this, they amazing because they get out there and they repair water washout and erosion and landslides, and they build retaining walls so that
Oh,
um, the trail stays pretty much in place. They do water runoff control measures, and they put in a lot of work. And the further the trail is away from a road, the longer you have to pack all the tools and repair equipment. Um,
okay.
it,
So wow. So I'm assuming it gets pretty intense and you should probably be in okay shape to do stuff like this.
it can get very intense. The Pacific Crest National Trail, the PCTA, the association, they do trail maintenance Mexico to Canada along the whole length. Um,
Whoa.
so those groups, they're camping on the trail while fixing it, or they're going to, 5 miles away to an adjacent town to get a room for the night. And yeah, the folks that do those trail maintenance, they're very dedicated, and it's very hard work.
Okay. And like you said, this is a volunteer opportunity. So it's more about just a labor of love versus, someone collecting a paycheck.
Right, right. And they're doing it because they want the opportunity to be there um, for a generation to come. They
Yeah.
want others to experience it.
I love everything about this. Okay. I have a new appreciation for what it goes to just maintain all of this. Oh, someone wants to know if there's any education that would be beneficial to look into before pursuing something um, in your world.
Um, for the law enforcement side, um, it always helps to have a good exposure to biology, botany, um, even a little bit of hydrology.
Okay.
Having a good understanding of the natural resources and how they interact, how you know the different plant life and trees, that good base knowledge, it really benefits as you're working through, because depending on where you're at, you may be doing a fire investigation, you may
Mhm.
be doing a timber theft investigation for illegal logging, or folks that go into the forest
Oh,
and either flat out cut illegally and take it, or the contractors and the companies, they knowingly or unknowingly get outside the boundaries of their contracted area.
hmm.
Um, and some of those permits are even species specific, so they may be only allowed to take a specific type of conifer. And if you have that base knowledge already built up from school and education, it
Mhm.
makes that part really easy. Unlike people like me who stare at a tree and go, I know it's a conifer, I can't tell you what kind, or I know it's an oak tree, but it's a lot of work to figure out for me.
I
And
mean, you're
there's
already a step ahead of me. I look at a tree and I'm just like, that's a nice tree.
there's a tree. Yeah. Um, just came to mind, Tree People here in LA, another good volunteer
Oh,
organization. If you're into just general conservation, great organization. They have a good education program. and volunteers get out and plant trees and try and get more trees in LA County.
Okay. And what kind of difference have we seen with like a program like that? Like, is it very noticeable? Like there's just more greenery around? Or has there been like, I don't know, oxygen levels have risen? I'm just curious if like how long they've been around.
Tree People has been around for a really long time, and
Okay.
they are really centered on uh, carbon offset and cleaning up the air, as well as preservation of water tables and
Oh,
the
okay.
rivers and all of that stuff. Their education piece, it's mind blowing what trees really do. You know,
Mhm.
it's I'm looking at it going, oh, a tree, it's shade. I can go take a nap under it, maybe have my lunch there, you know. But the benefit to the environment is really amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, trees just in general, we all depend on them.
Mhm.
So, yeah, having these groups that are actually doing a fundamental step as far as preserving them is really amazing. Oh, someone wants to know if there are ride-along programs associated with your department.
There are ride along opportunities. Um, there's generally it's 21 and up,
Okay.
um, but we do have uh, a way for anybody who's not quite 21 if they still want to do a ride along. We definitely have ways to still, you know, take care of that request and get people out to go ride along. Um, yeah,
Typically, what is seen during a ride-along? Like, is it, patrolling the area? What goes on?
um, you may get out and go hike a trail or a water drainage because you're chasing something that doesn't look right. You may go to a vehicle accident or be towing an abandoned car out of a riverbed, um, dealing with a fire. It really changes. If it's in the wintertime, you're going to
Mhm.
spend a lot of time telling people they can't park in the middle of the road and that they have to turn around. Because as soon as water freezes and falls to the ground in the form of snow, everybody just loses their mind and they have to go up there and they park in the middle of the road. And then when the kid gets injured, you know, a mile down the road, the ambulance can't get to them.
Makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, so kind of depends on the time of year, but it's always full of activity. I guarantee that.
Okay, very cool. And I do have one last question from our viewers, and they wanted to know if they wanted to find out more about career opportunities or how to progress more in your field. What are some websites that they can look at, or what is your website?
So if they go to the Angeles National Forest public website and it's Google or any search engine, just type Angeles National Forest. On the right-hand side of the homepage, there's a graphic that says report a non-emergency crime, and it has an email address on there. And it's a kind of a long, funny looking email address, but if they send a note to that email address and just says, hey, I'm interested and I'd like more information,
Mhm.
we will get information back to you. We'll let you know all the different programs, the different ways to come into the Forest Service, depending on what your interests are. And we'll also uh, point you in the direction of a lot of other federal and state agencies that do similar work. Because really the key is getting your foot in the door. And then once you're in, the opportunities to move around kind of open up a little bit better.
Okay. And
If
for
you,
those of you that aren't, so sorry, those of you that
oh,
are interested, we have dropped that link in the chat box. You're welcome to copy and paste that into your search engine, and you can go look at that funny looking email. All right, Russ. So thank you so much for spending time with us, carving time out of your awesome adventurous day, and giving us some more information about what you do and the important roles that kind of center around all of these amazing programs and our ecosystem and the very cool mountain lions and bears.
okay, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been fun.
Awesome sauce. All right, guys, we do have one more careers in animal welfare coming up in 2 weeks. We are going to be talking to a very, very cool person who actually worked kind of hand in hand with the Pasadena Humane Society. So we hope to see you again, not this Friday, but the next Friday. And if you are interested in any more of our educational workshops, in-person events, even just want to stay up to date with what we're doing, go ahead and check us out at pasadenahumane.org under the events tab. All right, guys, I hope you have a great weekend and thank you for being here. Bye, guys.
All right, thank you.